shoots and kills Captain Robert Dave Melton this afternoon in Kansas City, Kansas. He is the second police officer from that city's police force to die doing his job this year.
Emily, according to CNN, police have one person in custody. 2 people who might be connected have been detained, and police add they are still looking for one more suspect. In the meantime, this is what we know about what led up to this officer's death. The Kansas City, Kansas police chief says Captain Robert Dave Melton was responding to a drive-by shooting call. Melton was by himself when he tried to pull a car over, that car matching a description. The chief says Melton arrived just as a chase ended, and the people inside the car jumped out and fired at him. Doctors got the call of an officer down shortly after 2 o'clock this afternoon. CPR failed. Doctors were not able to save Melton. He died just before 3 this afternoon. Michael, like you mentioned, Melton is the second KCK police officer to die in the line of duty this year. And in the midst of the current national climate about police right now, the mayor of Kansas City asks for calm and prayers.
Our communities are broken right now, and my encouragement is that we not go down a path of fear and conclusions and hatred, but we go down a path of thoughtful, prayerful reflection about what we can all do to make our communities safer.
Social media has been ablaze during the last 24 hours as Chattahoochee Valley residents react to news where 2 sheriff's deputies were denied service at a Taco Bell in Phoenix City. The 2 deputies who work for the Lee County Sheriff's Department ordered their food, but a restaurant employee allegedly told them she would not serve any law enforcement officers.
Well, we actually reached out to a Taco Bell spokesperson, Simone, and we have the latest from corporate saying in a statement, quote, in the course of their investigation here in the Phoenix City store, the franchise owner has terminated the employee who refused service to those 2 Lee County deputies on July 16th. And that franchise owner, Takala, has contacted the Lee County Sheriff's Office to apologize directly to those 2 deputies who were refused service. Now, as we also did reach out to the sheriff of Lee County, Jay Jones, to get his reaction to hearing that 2 of his deputies were refused service here during their shift. And he also shared that he thanked corporate management for contacting them about the incident in Phoenix City last night, and that they were assured that this investigation was handled in a serious matter. Sheriff Jay Jones also wanted to mention that in light of the recent tragedy happening in Baton Rouge right now, that these sort of things happening in some local stores seem trivial compared to the things that law enforcement is encountering across the nation, and that he expressed his sincerest condolences and wanted to ask for prayers for the victims and the families of the shootings in Baton Rouge.
This is ground zero for protests outside the Republican National Convention here in Public Square in Cleveland. We have Black Lives Matter, pro-Trump, anti-Trump, anti-Islamophobia, fire and brimstone preachers, and Alex Jones of InfoWars was just carried out by police.
We are here to expose what's happening.
Between all of them, forming human barricades, are hundreds of officers from Cleveland and from around the country.
This is the Bible. Yes, sir. That's the Bible. And you, sir, do not represent.
It's always the goal, every day. Make sure that people are allowed to express their First Amendment rights, and everybody else kind of stay out of the way, and we don't have any violence. So that's what the guys are doing, letting people say what they want to do.
We all people. You know, it doesn't matter your skin color or none of that, you know, so we're not going to tolerate racism of any kind here in Cleveland, Ohio. We just won the world championship, and we're going to be a world-class city from top to bottom.
To put an end to the system which causes all this destruction and brutality.
think about Deutsche Bank? Do you think they will be the next Lehman Brothers?
Well, I've been warning since last September to watch Deutsche Bank, which a lot of people think, well, Germany, they're supposed to be the strongest economy in Europe. They're the backbone of Europe. Well, yeah, they are. But Deutsche Bank, they're being the biggest and most important bank and the biggest and most important economy in Europe. Deutsche Bank's had all kinds of troubles and scandals. They've gotten hit with huge fines, including by the U.S. government for things that they were involved in that they shouldn't have been involved in. And they made a lot of bad decisions, a lot of bad in trades. And so Deutsche Bank, they announced a massive loss for last year, billions of euros. And their stock price earlier this year hit an all-time low, and it's been hovering in that neighborhood ever since. And so there's all kinds of rumors and reports. And of course, Deutsche Bank at one point had more exposure to derivatives contracts, which, of course, Warren Buffett has referred to derivatives contracts as weapons of financial mass destruction. But Deutsche Bank had more exposure to derivatives than any other financial institution on the entire planet. At one point, it was estimated to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $75 trillion of exposure. So, they've been even more reckless than the too big to fail banks in the United States. So I'd keep watching Deutsche Bank, because if they go under, that's just going to be kind of pulling out the rug from the entire banking system of all of Europe, which is already falling apart.
More than 18 small earthquakes have shaken Central California in the past few days. Well, people in the state are now wondering, is the big one coming? Brigitte, 18 earthquakes in a few days, even if they are somewhat small, that's a lot. Why are there so many quakes right now?
The number has even gone up since I have looked at this last. I've been kind of monitoring it from here. But the reason that this is happening, the U.S. Geological Survey says, is because this is a highly geologically active area. Now, all of these quakes have taken place between the areas of Hollister and Cambria, which are two cities in Central California. And Hollister considers itself to be one of 3 places in California that has declared itself to be the earthquake capital of the world. Now, the largest of these was at 3.8, but most of them are much, much smaller. And in fact, there have actually been 70 earthquakes within the last 7 days in this particular area. The USGS says that there's no reason to worry. There's no evidence to indicate that there will be a larger quake. However, they have pointed to a swarm that took place in 2010 out of Yellowstone, in which 2,000 earthquakes took place between a 1-month period. So they do say that people in California should look at this as a wake-up call and a reminder, reminding them in a friendly way that yes, they do live in a place where earthquakes take place often, and to update their emergency supplies. Simone.
A huge sinkhole has forced the evacuation of 4 homes near Tampa, Florida. Look at that. It was discovered Monday under a home in Holiday, Florida. It's estimated to be about 30 feet wide, 15 feet deep, and it's still growing. Now, the owner of the home was not there at the time, so nobody was hurt and no homes have been swallowed, but certainly keeping an eye on things. Officials have set up a 100-foot perimeter around the hole, and engineers will inspect it to see what needs to be done.
Fears of a bubonic plague outbreak are now spreading in Russia. Will Stewart for the Daily Mail UK reports that thousands of Russians are now being given emergency vaccinations against the bubonic plague after a boy contracted the deadly infectious disease while skiing at Marmot. They state here that the vaccine is being rushed to the remote Kash Aga in the Altai Mountains in a bid to stop a full-scale outbreak of the Black Death infection. They write here that the 10-year-old boy was helping his grandfather on a hunting expedition when he caught the plague while skinning a rodent. It says here that the unnamed child cut himself with the knife he was using and is now fighting for his life in intensive care with high fever. It says here that on Thursday he was in serious but stable condition. Russian authorities have taken all 17 people with whom he had contact into quarantine. 6 at this at-risk group are children. At least 4,000 residents live in the region. They will be urgently vaccinated as a precaution.
Meanwhile, health officials are investigating an ominous development in the Zika epidemic. In Utah, a person who was caring for a Zika-infected relative also got the virus without sexual contact or a mosquito involved, at least not suspected. The investigation is focused on how that person became infected after having contact with the deceased patient who had a uniquely high amount of the virus in their blood.
The controversial purging campaign by Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is spreading from the military to the academia. Hundreds of university deans have been fired. The Turkish leader has told his supporters that the government will be making a big announcement on Wednesday.
The post-coup crackdown has now reached the ivory tower. Turkey's High Education Board on Tuesday ordered the resignation of more than 1,500 university deans. State broadcaster TRT says the resignations are being sought at both state and privately run universities. Sources say the forced resignation is aimed at removing those associated with U.S.-based Islamic preacher Fethullah Gulen, whom President Erdogan is blaming for the coup attempt. Earlier in the day, more than 15,000 staff working for the National Education Ministry were sacked. Over the past 4 days, thousands of others ranging from the military, police, judiciary to other government offices have either been suspended or detained, with many now facing prosecution.
North Korea fired 3 ballistic missiles Tuesday morning in what appears to be a protest against a THAAD deployment aimed at protecting South Korea from the North's missile provocations. Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff said North Korea fired the 3 missiles from North Hwanghae-do province between 5:45 a.m. and 6:40 a.m. South Korea time. 2 of the missiles flew between 500 and 600 kilometers before falling into the EC.
The flight range of the ballistic missiles is enough to reach all of South Korea, including the southern port city of Busan.
The flight path of one missile is still being analyzed, but a Joint Chiefs of Staff official said it is looking into whether the North intentionally shortened the range by launching the missile from a steep angle. The missiles fired this morning are presumed to be Scud-class or intermediate-range Nodong missiles. The launch comes after the North threatened a physical response as soon as the location of the THAAD unit deployment in South Korea was confirmed.
7 soldiers have been killed and over a dozen others wounded in some of the bloodiest clashes in eastern Ukraine in 2 months. The situation remains tense, particularly in the Luhansk region. Fighting also continues near Gorlovka in the Donetsk region. The announcement follows a recent flurry of talks between world leaders and Moscow aimed at stopping the 26-month war. More than 9,500 people have been killed since the outbreak of hostilities in April 2015. The conflict is seen as a tug-of-war between the West and Russia.
The sea breeze exercises have kicked off in Ukraine's Odessa and Mykolaiv regions. For the next 2 weeks, the southern regions of Ukraine will witness drills and coordinating operations in line with the NATO standards in the sea, land and air. 25 combat ships, 20 aircraft and over 140 automotive and armored vehicles are involved in the drills. The exercises are held against the backdrop of rising tensions between Russia and NATO. Unprecedented NATO activities along Russia's borders have angered Moscow, but some experts in Kyiv believe the annual drills should not raise tensions.
Almost every year we have such exercises, and all our neighbors, and including Russia, has to understand that it's normal, common thing. We just want to improve our army, and NATO can help in this. And this isn't against Russia.
However, others believe the drills are aimed at putting pressure on Moscow.
I think these military drills are aimed at sending a political message to Russia that the Black Sea region won't remain under their sole control. And given the weakening of Ukrainian naval forces, the NATO is ready to support Ukraine if the situation deteriorates in Azov and Black Sea region.
Ukraine's military participates in 10 international military drills this year. 4 of them will take place in Ukraine and 6 will be hosted by other countries. The Sea Breeze exercises organized by Ukraine and the U.S. have been taking place since 1997, but this year's drill will be the biggest one. 4,000 military men from 16 countries are taking part in the drills. The exercise will last till July 30 in northwestern parts of the Black Sea.